Thomas here with Much Props, going to give you another how-to video. Today I am building something Viking related. Now you have seen me build full cosplay, you have seen me build Renaissance costumes, you have seen me build several things in this type of style, and I am really excited to continue to add to the layers of the costumes that I have made. So my friend has been coming with us to Ren fairs now, and I wanted to kind of help her build out some of her costume also, and she really wanted a Valkyrie style headdress. So we kind of thought up some ideas, and I've been designing this for the past couple of weeks. It's one of those projects that I keep pushing back because I don't want to mess it up. So the game plan is to make it out of foam in this build, and if things go well and it fits right, we may make it out of leather later on down the road, and that would be its own separate build because it's got a little different bit of a process to it. So today we are making a Viking Valkyrie style headdress out of EVA foam. Let's get to building. So my friend Ryan and I sat down to draw a bunch of ideas for the shape and detailing of this headdress based off of various helmets and other references we could find. We spent a good 2 hours brainstorming ideas. I'll include these in the template in case you see a design that you like better than the one that we decided on. We drew straight on, profile view, and even drew the smaller details to get a better idea. I saran wrapped her head and then duct taped it. She didn't want me to show this on the video, so I am respecting that wish. It's very similar to how you've seen me do on a mannequin. The only real difference is it fits her head to the exact shape. I transfer the duct tape pattern to the poster board and add layers to it. It's a little bit of guesswork and a lot of making it up as we go. Once satisfied with the game plan, I trace the patterns onto the foam. I marked each piece with a thickness in case you want to try and make this yourself. The template is free and down in the description below the video. With the pattern traced onto the foam, I'm now ready to cut it out. I take a sharp hobby knife and do my best to pull as steady as possible all the way through the thickness of the foam. The cleaner the pull, the less cleanup I'll have to do later with sanding. All the markings you see on my pattern are explained in the cover letter that goes with the template, so make sure you read that before you start building it. That way this stuff makes sense. Otherwise it's just gibberish. I think it's important to show my failures as well as my successes. Now, while this may not look like a complete failure, it is the hardest way possible that I probably could have done it. Initially, I thought I would just carve into this 6mm foam to add all the details. This approach took a very steady hand and quite a bit of skill. Trying to carve tapers on both sides of the feather quill, narrowing the tips to make the feathers look thinner, and then burning in the rest of the details was a bad choice. After about 30 minutes and only 3 feathers done, I realized I would be here for days trying to get this detail into the 5 layers of feathers that I have. Eventually I realized this and decided to pivot to some thinner foam and a different approach, which I'll show you next. With some 4mm foam, all I had to do was carve the bottom of each feather. I move a whole lot faster doing it this way. Then to add the quills to the feather, that raised part in the middle, instead of carving it in, I just cut it out of some 2mm foam and super glued it on top. Then I burned in the details with a wood burner and scored some lines in with a hobby knife and hit it with a heat gun. The combination of these two things make the feathers look a little bit more realistic. With all the feather details added, I am ready to design the middle of the headdress. We took another hour or two and came up with several cool ideas for the middle. As we thumbed through the different versions with cool Viking runes and iconography, we both kind of honed in on the last one that Ryan came up with. It was a cool raven symbolizing wisdom and memory and thought in Norse mythology. It also connects to Odin's divine messengers Hugin and Munin, who fly around the world bringing him back knowledge from all the 9 realms. I made my laser cutter cut out the raven I drew on my computer, and then I tried to cut bits of foam out of various thickness to add the rest of Ryan's details. It was not an easy task, but I think I got relatively close to her design. With all the front pieces figured out, I'm ready to start putting this thing together to kind of get an idea of what it's going to look like. I heat formed the front with my heat gun to get a general shape, pushing it up against the mannequin head to help it take form. Then I began adding contact cement to the edges that I needed to join and started tacking bits together once the contact cement was no longer wet to the touch. The nice thing about layers is that it's going to hide all the seams and reinforce them, hopefully preventing them from separating in the ridiculous Texas heat that I'm sure is about to come. My scrollwork piece was just slightly too small due to the curving of the base layer piece, so I made sure to line up the feather side instead of the middle diamond. I went in and made another layer later that will cover up this gap in the pattern. You'll eventually see it right before I start painting. I do my best to line up the reference lines, trying to get my feathers to fall in line with each other layer after layer so you don't notice the transition as much. I put a crazy amount of detail into the front of this head headdress. I really want it to be a showstopper. You'll notice some spaces in the scroll work. In our design, I planned on incorporating real gemstones that I had bought before starting to build this. I ended up making another layer to go over the top of them to make it look like there was a mount that they were on. The back of the headdress was designed to be a little customizable to the size of your head. I also tried to keep in mind that the end goal of this is to potentially make it out of leather at some point. So I made the flap that will eventually be the backing on the leather version with the lace. This will keep the wearer from having their hair knotted up in the lacing when they tie it. For the foam version, this flap isn't really necessary, but it does make for a cool detail to make it look a little bit more realistic. It also allowed me to partially assemble the headdress, bring it to work to help fit it to her head, and then finish it back at home knowing that it would fit her. What was nice was I actually found out that her head was about the same size as my mannequin, which is always annoying because it's too small for me, but it worked out. So I taped the back of this in position and then laid the front down on top to get the alignment perfect on the head. The back really looked plain, so after a little searching, I was able to configure some bits together in the proper shape to fit over the top of the back flaps. I thought this cool looking Valkyrie warrior would add a nice little bit of interest to the boring backside of the headdress. I let my laser cutter engrave it in just a couple of minutes and got ready to glue it to the back after I got the approval from my friend. It was a lot of back and forth trying to make sure she was included in on all the decisions of what she would have to be wearing, or what hopefully she would want to wear. It was a fun collaboration of ideas, and I think we came up with some pretty cool things. Now these bits are going to be put onto the back of the wings so that I can add a cool lacing detail into the back of the band. If you don't have a laser cutter, you could always try to burn this by hand with a wood burner, or simplify it and do some more knot work or even more feather details. Or you could just leave it blank if you wanted to and paint a scene on the back, or there's a number of other approaches you could take to decorate the back of this thing with. I added some eyelet holes for the back of the foam version. I cut some strips of foam and heated them over my heat gun, pulling them until they broke. When the foam recoils, it has this nice wrinkly texture that I thought made for a more realistic looking leather cordage, kind of a Bob Ross happy little accident type situation. I super glue an end in the hole and then crisscross it to make my next attachment on the way up. I added a cute little bow at the top of the lacing and capped off the construction part of this build. 2 coats of Plastidip. With the black base coat down, I'm ready to paint on the details. I'm going to go with a mixture of gold and silver to match the parts of her costume. She has a green tunic and wanted some added to the feathers of the raven. Since ravens have an oil slick sheen known as structural coloration, a diffraction of the light bending over the feathers, it seemed fitting to make it a bit iridescent. I mixed some color shifting green paint with some darker green to make it stand out. I also used some acrylic paint pens in silver and gold to help me do some of the lines on the scroll work. These raised areas are what the entire knotwork was designed around. I bought some gemstones in the early planning of this headdress. These pretty white gems with green veins in them are called dolomite. Dolomite is pretty common and often found in limestone, but the green veined variant that I have is relatively uncommon compared to the other colors that it has. Its color comes from the presence of chlorite, serpentine, and copper. While I'm not sure about the power in stones, they say that it's supposed to be a grounding, emotional balance, and heart-centered healing stone. I got it because it was a pretty green vein, and that's my friend's favorite color. After scuffing up the foam in the back of the gemstones, I used some E6000 to secure them together. I've never used this adhesive before, but I read that it has a pretty strong bond and does have a little bit of flexibility, which is what I think this band needs. So fingers crossed, we shall see if it holds up. I'm probably going to put a liner in it, but that's the kind of thing that my friend needs to be present for so that I don't make it too snug on her head. Maybe a nice suede or a faux leather to make it feel good to the wearer. I hope you enjoyed this build, and I'll see you again next week for another epic build. And we are finished. Here is the end result. Overall, I think this thing turned out pretty awesome. I definitely think my friend is going to be stoked about it. It is not sized to fit my head. It is templated off of hers. So if you've got like a 22 to a 23 inch head, the template by default should fit you pretty well. If not, you may need to size it up or down accordingly, because it's definitely not fitting us big-headed people. So yeah, maybe you will try and make one of these yourselves and impress your friends with your ability to help increase the amount of coolness to their costume. And I don't know, like I'm super psyched about this. Yeah, maybe you'll get some. Yay! And inevitably, they're gonna ask you, how'd you make that? You can give them one of these. Tell them, much props. Now it's just time to go give it to her. Peace out. If you enjoy what I do here on YouTube and you want to see more builds like this one, please consider joining these awesome people listed here with me over on my Patreon to build a bigger, better, more creative community together.